Hey guys, welcome back to my channel Recap Corner. Today, I've got a special treat for you, a recap of the movie Faster. Spoilers ahead. Be prepared, watch out and take care. Jimmy Cullen, a prisoner currently serving his sentence, noticed a photo on the wall of his cell featuring him and his brother together. Shortly thereafter, some officers arrived and escorted Jimmy out of his cell, as his sentence had finally come to an end after many years. Jimmy is now on the verge of being released from prison. Before his release, he is brought to the warden, who compliments him as a good person and encourages him to start a new life outside. However, Jimmy pays little attention to her words, as his primary focus is to get out of the prison as soon as possible. After being released from prison, Jimmy promptly arrives at a junkyard where a car and a file containing details of certain individuals are waiting for him. He also finds a gun inside the car. Without delay, Jimmy takes possession of the car and speeds off. He eventually arrives at an office and shoots a man whose name and photo were in the file he had received earlier. Following the successful elimination of his first target, Jimmy comes across Roy Groan, the person who had provided him with the car, gun, and file. Roy is an informer who works for people in exchange for money. Jimmy demands the name and address of his next target from Roy. While serving his sentence in prison, Jimmy had given a significant amount of money to Roy in exchange for information on certain individuals. However, when Jimmy meets Roy after being released, he learns that it took Roy 5 years to obtain the information. Frustrated and angry, Jimmy confronts Roy and attempts to physically assault him. Roy, however, signals his bodyguard to intervene. Upon realizing that Jimmy is a notorious and dangerous prisoner, the bodyguard decides to flee rather than fight him. With no other options left, Roy is forced to provide Jimmy with the information he needs to locate and eliminate his next targets. Roy is well aware that failure to cooperate with Jimmy could result in his own death. Consequently, he shares the information with Jimmy, who promptly leaves to track down his next target. Meanwhile, Officer Humphreys and his partner, Cicero, arrive at the scene where Jimmy had eliminated his first target. They are there to conduct an investigation into the incident. As the investigation takes place, a highly skilled hitman known as Killer receives a call from a client who offers him a contract to kill Jimmy. The client provides Killer with a photo of Jimmy to help identify the target. During the investigation, Detective Cicero discovers a videotape that sheds light on Jimmy's past. He shares the information with his partner, Humphreys, revealing that Jimmy had been involved in a major robbery where he displayed great skill in driving getaway cars. After the robbery, Jimmy and his team were attacked by another gang who tortured them in an attempt to uncover the whereabouts of the stolen money. Despite the torture, Jimmy's brother Gary refused to disclose any information about the stolen money. Following the revelation of the stolen money, a gang member threatens Jimmy to reveal the location of the money or else they will kill his brother, Gary. Fearing for his brother's life, Jimmy discloses the location of the money. However, the gang kills Gary in front of Jimmy, and someone shoots Jimmy in the head from behind. The robbers assume that Jimmy is dead, but he is rescued and saved by a team of doctors. Jimmy undergoes a surgery to have iron plates inserted into his skull before he is sent back to prison. Detective Cicero informs his partner, Humphreys, that his investigation revealed that Jimmy is seeking revenge for his brother's death and plans to eliminate all those responsible for the killing once he is released from prison. As Jimmy continues his quest for revenge, he arrives to eliminate his next target, Kenneth Tyson, the man who had recorded the incident that led to Jimmy's imprisonment. Unbeknownst to Jimmy, Killer has been tailing him closely. Jimmy confronts Tyson and shoots him point-blank in the forehead, killing him instantly. After eliminating his target, Jimmy senses that Killer is following him closely. As Killer approaches him to carry out the contract he was hired for, Jimmy quickly retaliates by shooting at him. However, Jimmy chooses not to kill Killer as he only wants to eliminate those who were involved in his brother's death. This infuriates Killer, as he has never failed to kill his victim before. Upon meeting his girlfriend Marina, Jimmy tries to explain his reasons for leaving her. However, Marina is filled with anger and slaps him. She expresses her disappointment and reveals that she had an abortion after Jimmy was sent to prison. Furthermore, Marina tells Jimmy that she has moved on and started a new life with someone else. Upon hearing this, Jimmy feels devastated and heartbroken. Marina states that she is aware Jimmy is killing those responsible for his brother's death and hopes he succeeds in taking out his next target as he departs. Jimmy's next target was Hovis Nixon, an employee at a Nevada strip club. Nixon had killed Jimmy's brother by slitting his throat, so when Jimmy arrived at the club, he searched for Nixon. When he saw Nixon going to the washroom, Jimmy followed him. Nixon pulled out a knife, and a long fight ensued between the two. Eventually, Jimmy injured Nixon severely, and he left, thinking he had killed him. However, the next morning, he heard on the radio that Nixon was alive and in the hospital. Upon hearing this news, Jimmy quickly turned his car around and headed to the hospital. Next, we see Officer Humphreys, who knows that Jimmy stabbed Nixon at the strip club, so he goes to the hospital because he believes that Jimmy will also come to the hospital to kill Nixon. Meanwhile, the killer is informed by his client that Jimmy is heading to the hospital to kill his target. After reaching the hospital, Jimmy goes straight to the operating room and kills Nixon. Humphreys hears gunshots and goes after Jimmy, shooting at him. In response, Jimmy fires his gun back at Humphreys, causing the officer to take cover. In a moment of fear, Humphreys also points his gun at Jimmy, but Jimmy doesn't shoot him. Instead, he leaves the hospital without harming any innocent people on his way out. Jimmy sees a car following him. Inside is a killer who wants to kill him. Jimmy drives his car faster and pulls ahead. Though he could have killed the killer, his mission is to only eliminate his enemies, so he shoots at the tire. The killer still wants to take his victim down, so he shoots at him and hits Jimmy's neck. Jimmy then runs away. Jimmy returned home to kill his father, believing his dad had intended to harm him and Gary due to their refusal to repay the stolen money. His mother assured him it wasn't true. She maintained that his father would never do such a thing, since he loves them both. She treated his wound and mentioned Gary's girlfriend was aware of the theft, and might have informed other gang members. After this, Jimmy left. Jimmy's next target was Alexander Jared, who had become a Christian preacher. When Jimmy was about to kill him, he heard Jared's speech on the radio. Jared said one should never steal or hurt anyone, and if someone makes a mistake, we should forgive them. Hearing this, tears filled Jimmy's eyes. Officer Humphreys informs his partner Cicero that those responsible for the murders of Jimmy and his brother were also involved in a robbery. Jimmy has killed all of his adversaries, but one remains alive. Humphreys is determined to rescue the individual from Jimmy. Jimmy had reached his next target. He saw the killer who had come there after getting information from his client. Jimmy walked in as Jared was giving a speech and there were many people in front of him. Jared recognized Jimmy when he saw him. Jared had been a decoy and murderer before, but he had changed. Jimmy brings him out of the tent and Jared expresses regret and states he has changed. He informs Jimmy that killing him will not bring his brother back, and that the fire of revenge has not been stoked. Despite this, Jared begs for forgiveness. He kneels and apologizes to Jimmy. Jimmy hears Jared's words and attempts to kill him, but he understands that Jared has changed and is no longer the same person. He decides to leave Jared alive and departs from the spot. He returns to the same place where Jared gave his speech and sits alone, gazing at his brother's photo. Suddenly, a killer appears and points a gun at Jimmy. The killer says he'll carry out his mission by killing Jimmy. When the killer sees the list in Jimmy's hand, he reveals that there is a man missing from it, and that this man is responsible for his brother's death. He also reveals that he has been given a contract to kill Jimmy, as the man knew Jimmy would come to kill him. Humphreys calls Cicero and informs him that he has located Jimmy, and intends to apprehend him. Cicero cautions him against going alone, as it is too dangerous. He should wait for the team to arrive. Nevertheless, Humphreys disregards his advice and enters with his gun. Killer informs Jimmy they had been attempting to take his life for many days, giving him the opportunity to retaliate if he wished, but he hadn't. On hearing this, Jimmy responds he had no ill will towards them. Both of them were conversing when Humphreys arrived, pointing a gun at the killer, who then lowered his own. Suddenly, Humphreys shot Jimmy in the head. Upon seeing this, the killer said Humphreys had given him the contract to kill him, to which Humphreys replied that he had been waiting for days to see if the killer could do it, but when he found that he couldn't, he had to take matters into his own hands. Humphreys smiled upon hearing the killer's confusion as to why he killed him. It was revealed that the officer was the one who had shot Jimmy in the head during the robbery. In truth, Humphreys' wife was Gary's girlfriend and she had informed him of Gary and Jimmy's plan. He then went to Jimmy's house with his team, killing all of Jimmy's accomplices and taking their money. Humphreys knew that Jimmy would eventually find out about him, so he acted quickly to take him out. Humphrey stops the killer and offers his fee, but the killer refuses and tells him not to contact him again. After this, Humphrey calls his wife and reveals that he killed Jimmy so they can live in peace. On the other hand, Detective Cicero is aware that Officer Humphreys was involved in the killing of Jimmy's brother, and she hurries to Humphreys' place. Humphreys is talking to his wife when Jimmy shoots him from behind, catching him off guard. Jimmy reveals that the last time Humphreys shot him in the head, the doctors inserted an iron plate, which prevented him from being harmed this time. After his explanation, Jimmy shoots Humphreys. Jimmy kills Humphreys, then leaves. Cicero and his team arrive later to find Humphreys dead. Realizing Jimmy was responsible for avenging his brother's death, Cicero finds the bones and sets them free. Jimmy takes off in his car and the movie ends. Thank you for joining us into our review. We hope you had as much fun watching it as we did breaking it down for you. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss a video from us.